Hey everybody, this is Tete again on another brief post which is going through to my YouTube channel. If you can, like, subscribe to my channel. It always helps the content to be shared to other people of like minds and helps us to have something to say about the agenda that is right now hogged mostly by the mainstream media. Today, I'm going to talk about four things very quickly. I'm going to try and keep this inside of 10 minutes, so that's going to be quite a gallop. Let's jump right in. First thing I want to say is that the world in which we live has to be understood for what it is. The first thing we've got to understand that as within, so without, as above, so below, meaning there's a connection between how we are and the environment that we are seeing in front of us. First point. Second point, it follows quite naturally, therefore, that if we want the environment to change, what we are projecting onto it needs to change. But unfortunately, mostly people want the world to change while they remain the same. Makes no sense. The third point is that the politicians that are running our global affairs in every country, absolutely every country on this blue pebble, are not really in charge of themselves, though they are in charge of us. It seems as if somebody behind the scenes, some invisible force, some invisible entities, some invisible authorities stand behind the politicians and pull their strings. And they, in turn, stand in front of us and pull our strings and control us. But of course, it's completely back to front because we, the people, are supposed, in most modern democracies, to be deciding what our leaders make our priorities. Finally, all of these problems cannot be solved unless there is a fundamental shift of mentality and indeed consciousness. Because if we keep doing the same things, using the same kind of logic, it's impossible for us to find new solutions. We've been trying for a long time. None of us are stupid. It means that the way in which we set up the problem for solution and the eyes with which we see our problems and our solutions are slightly, what should we say, slightly off kilter. Okay. So, first thing, as within, so without. Um, I watched a film recently. It talked about at the end of the world where there was a catastrophic electrical power grid failure, which brought the world literally to the end. I won't say any more because there are too many spoilers that I could put out. But through the course of the narrative, it was quite clear that it was through acts of commission, acts of omission, acts of negligence, acts of denial, acts of turning a blind eye towards what we ourselves were doing and what was happening in our environment, that that particular calamity came about. And in a snapshot, it made it so clear to me something which I've always felt in my waters anyway. The truth being that we are creating, we are not creating as such, co-creating what we're seeing in the world today. If you're able to sit in your country and turn a blind eye to the suffering of somebody in another country, because for you to focus on their suffering would mean that you might end up paying higher prices or fair prices or changing the terms of trade so that those people over there could live a better life. Um, then whatever results from that was in part created by your not ignorance, because often we know about what's going on. Rather, it's your ignorance of what it is that's going on in your environment. So that is how come that as within, as we are within, so the world is without. Secondly, everyone wants the world to change while they remain sane. Or put another way, everyone wants the world to change first, then they will change. Of course, the first person never comes. That's why in the First World War, when they blew the whistle for the troops to go out of the trenches and into no man's land, to walk into the hail of machine gun fire, if somebody refused to go, they'd probably get shot right there and then for cowardice in the face of the enemy. But nobody's holding a gun to our heads, apparently. And so everyone is sitting back. The whistle's been blown for us to go over the top and solve our problems. But everybody's sitting back and looking here and looking there and looking up and looking down, waiting for somebody else to go and solve the problem, which once solved, you will be the first in line to enjoy the benefits of that particular solution. So we're materialistic. Uh, we want more of everything than really we need. And it is when actually something happens to you to change your scale of wants and desires that you suddenly recognize how greedy you've been in the past. Secondly, we are as egocentric AF. Everything is seen through the prism of number one. And so number one has to be the winner in every situation, not realizing that if number one constantly has to lord it large over everybody else, it will naturally require the destruction of many, many lives. And in the process of that destruction, a need, because most of us are perfectly normal human beings. We have a conscience. There will be the need for us to pretend or ignore the carnage that we're causing. We're also very five sense focused. I always have to count them off because I never remember what they are. There's a sense of hearing, sight, smell, touch, taste, uh, and yeah, those five senses is what we use to judge everything. It's the most basic way of gathering information and analyzing it. First place, let's take, for example, the spectrum of light. We can only see about 0.5% of the spectrum of light that's running in the universe right now. So we are, in actual fact, almost blind, and yet we're prepared to take life or death decisions on the 0.05% of the spectrum of events that we can observe. Hearing is not dissimilar. Most people can't hear a dog whistle when it's blind, but dogs hear it, and yet we would say that, oof, there's nothing going on there. You can't see electrical waves, you can't see radio waves, you can't see TV waves, and so on, but they're absolutely there. If they weren't, I couldn't do this broadcast and upload it to YouTube and Facebook. So they're there, but we don't see them. And yet our perception of everything is based on this very, very limited five senses. I'm not saying let's ignore them. What I'm saying is that we must understand the limitations of our perception. So, continuing to judge life, the entirety of life, only less than 1% of which we can see, on the basis of uh, this very limited perception, is a little bit like eating soup with a fork. It's not the right instrument. It's not enough. You need a spoon. And if you use a fork consistently to try and eat soup, you'll probably starve. Third point, the politicians are puppets themselves, and then they puppeteer us. How many times have you heard people say that we voted them in to do X, Y, and Z, and within 2 years of being in power, they had absolutely gathered off on their own merry way, doing what they wanted to do. And then they'll come back at the end of their term with more promises about what they're going to do, on the basis of which they will ask for our votes. And you can't help but wonder, if you are even slightly conscious, you will become aware that the politicians everywhere in the world are the witting, mostly, and sometimes unwitting agents of very powerful forces which are pulling their puppet strings. Now, once the politicians are put in that position, we, the people who voted them into power, are rendered powerless. And because we have given them our power, they can actually manipulate us into a position in which we become docile, silent, compliant, even fearful of what they might do to us if we speak up. Well, there we are. The politicians are being puppeteered by somebody, and we are being puppeteered by the politicians. It's not going to end well. So, the last point I want to make is about, related to the idea of the five sense perception that we all have. It's quite clear that this merry-go-round of problems, difficulties, which has now brought us into a position in which there is a genocide, effective genocide going on in Gaza, where a nuclear armed power is smashing the Palestinians and herding them into a tiny corner of a little strip of, of a tiny fraction of land that used to be theirs. Okay, that's happening. Ukraine, I just checked the figures this afternoon. Estimates are 600 to 700,000 Ukrainians have been killed in that meat grinder of a war with powerful Russia. Now, this isn't to say it was this person's fault or that person's fault, because actually the stakes have been raised. Ursula von der Leyen has been heard to make pronouncements to the fact that NATO uh, conditions may be triggered, which would involve, and the reason I mention this is that actually the United Kingdom, even though it's out of Brexit, has done Brexit. It's still a NATO country. UK troops could be sucked into that war. This isn't scare. This is not scaremongering. It is very much a possibility. And not only would that be so, if we did, UK taxpayers would be picking up the tabs. And it looks as if the reason a lot of people have been jingoistic about the war in Ukraine here in the UK is that they believe that they could become contractors to provide arms for the conflict that's going on over there. But actually, no, the European Union, the EU, can appoint, according to their arrangements, a sole contractor to provide all the arms. And if they're not in your MP's constituency, not, as the French would say, tant pis, tough luck. It's not going to happen. So these are very, very unhappy circumstances. I personally do not want to see the hair on the head of one British serviceman going into a conflict of that nature, which, in my opinion, is very questionable in the purpose it serves for the destiny of the country in which I'm sitting right now, the United Kingdom. So I don't want British people to get killed in that. And I'm very mindful of what happened in World War One, World War Two. I think the cycle of, frankly, European bloodlust, it's got to stop. It's nearly 2024. We should have matured way beyond that. And so, one other thing I should mention, it's this kind of inexorable drive towards globalization where, pandemic treaties are being signed such that some unknown chinless wonder of a bureaucrat sitting thousands of miles away will determine what the policy in your country, wherever you're sitting now, they will determine what is going to be the policy in your country. Doesn't make sense to me. So there's only one solution to this. We can't use the same logic to solve problems which so far have been impervious to solution. We have to, in my opinion, change our mentality, indeed, change what we call our consciousness. And because the world is so small now, because the weapons we have available to ourselves are so dreadful, we need a sense of unity consciousness across the planet. Now, make no mistake, unity consciousness does not mean uniformity consciousness. I want an Englishman to be an Englishman. I want a Frenchman to be a Frenchman. I want a Palestinian to be a Palestinian. I want an Israeli to be an Israeli. I want a Zulu to be a Zulu. I want a Kenyan to be a Kenyan. I want South Africans to be South Africans. I want Ghanaians to be Ghanaians, with all the diversity, even within that country. But above and beyond this, there must be a sense of unity consciousness. And basically, that means respect for the humanity of the other, and implies automatically that whoever thinks that they are God's chosen ones, whoever thinks that they are superior to other people, need to get off their high horse, because it is a reflection of that inheld mentality that is being cast onto the projection screen of the world around us. We need to raise our consciousness beyond the egocentric, egomaniacal consciousness which creates the world in which we live right now. And so there, my friends, is what I'd like to share tonight. I hope I can share some more videos very soon. Thank you so much for listening, and please do subscribe, share, and leave your comments underneath. Thank you.